Hello there, internets. If I was a more organized human being, this would have been the first video that I did in my little series on avoiding charlatans, but my primary organization tends to be the thing that I'm most interested in at the moment, or the thing that I've thought about the most recently. Big picture, not my strong suit. So this is an important topic though, and it's the idea that there should be no information monopolies in your practice of being a happy human being. If somebody tells you, I and only I can reveal to you the way that you will achieve your happiness, that should be a giant red flag. Run for the hills. And the simple reason for that is the challenge of living well has been taken up by people for thousands of years. All of the answers are actually out there in various forms. So if somebody has an answer, somebody else has an answer too. And there are dozens of major traditions and thousands of minor traditions that have a lot of insight to offer you as to how to be a happy human being. So if anybody says, no, it's just me, they're setting you up for exploitation, period, full stop, get the hell out of there. So with that in mind, we do need to talk about a little bit about sort of the student-teacher relationship and this sort of thing, because a lot of times that's a natural pattern that forms, that one person is the teacher and another person is the student, and there's a lot of benefit to be gained on the student's part for that. And a big part of it is to keep in mind, even as a student, that you have the majority part to play in your happiness. You can't turn the problem of achieving your happiness over to another human being and expect results, because that other human being just doesn't have enough information about your interior state, and they never actually can. Our languages are not designed to convey information about internal states of mind very well, and so you just can't give them enough information for them to see in fine detail what's going on in your head and what steps need to be taken to set that to right to get you on a good path. And that means that this is a fundamentally experimental process. You have to engage meaningfully with your current mental state, and find out what tweaks, what changes are available to you, to what extent you can intervene, and to what extent you can discover the causes and conditions of the states that you find yourself in. And then within that, once you understand that, once you've really compiled the data on that, you have to figure out what your happiness looks like, and it's going to look different from the happiness of other people. So it can be very helpful to have guidance from somebody who's been through this process before, but you have to understand that it's on you to generate all of that information, it's on you to generate the conclusions, and it's on you to take the steps. Somebody can offer you guidance, they can't do it for you, and probably, if you're going to be successful, you're actually going to need guidance from a number of different sources. So, information monopoly is just right out, because first off, if somebody is unwilling to recognize that other people might have a better insight into a particular thing that's going on with you, then they're not really worth paying attention to. They don't understand the scope of the problem. They're charlatans, just hands down. But I lost my train of thought there. But they're charlatans, just hands down. I thought I had two pieces. I didn't have two pieces. Maybe I had two pieces. I don't know. So one problem that you're going to run into with this, though, is that all of these sort of traditions accumulate cruft over time, because not everybody who participates in the tradition understands even really what the goal is or what the point is of all of the striving. And so stuff gets accumulated, people misinterpret. You know, some inspired founder has some great ideas, and then other people don't understand what they're talking about, and they build systems out of them. It's an unfortunate human behavior. So you have to learn the skill of sort of separating the wheat from the chaff. And doing that, I feel, requires you to do a little bit of comparative analysis. There's sort of this, there's this notion that any given tradition is probably going to have a few true things and a lot of BS. And if you compare multiple different traditions, you can sort of see, like, what's the intersection? What do these have in common? And that's where you're likely going to find some good results, some good actual information. Um, that is counterbalanced against a real challenge, which is that most of the sort of texts that are available from the various traditions on how to be a happy human being that have cropped up over the thousands of years of written human history are so confusing as to be almost useless to people who are outside of those traditions. And what that means is that if you're really going to get a handle on this domain, you have to find some group of folks who are not exploitive, who are actually looking out for your best interests. And that's going to require some vigilance and some real close attention paying in the early phases of assessing this. And then you need to go deep at least once in some tradition. For me, it was Mahayana Buddhism with an emphasis on Zen texts, right? I just went really deep with the understanding that most of it was nonsense, but it's like, if I hop around tradition to tradition to tradition to tradition, I'm going to spend most of my time figuring out the syntax of these various traditions and never actually understand the semantics of this domain. I'm not going to understand what this is all about because I'm going to spend all my time just trying to figure out what people are saying, picking up new jargon and technical terms and whatnot. So you have to get far enough into something that you really begin to meaningfully engage with the challenges of the problem domain of being a happy human being. And once you've done that, hopefully in an environment where you're encouraged to compare what other traditions have said. When I was living in a monastery, nominally a Zen place, but we still read, I don't know, I still read materials from Hindu sources, from Christian sources, from Islamic sources, and of course, I still had my entire library of philosophy, and I was still reading everything I could get my hands on about cognitive science and neuroscience and whatnot. Just trying to see where these different sources differ and where they actually overlap to see if I could find my way to some mapping of the syntax I was picking up to the semantics of my actual human experience of struggling with the idea of happiness. And once you get that mapping, it's actually not that hard, and you can pick up some other tradition, pick up their texts, and you read along for a while, and what's this? Oh, okay, cool. So an example of that, my buddy is Sikh, and he sent me a video of a Sikh teacher explaining some concepts that come up, and without context, after about 30 seconds, I was like, oh, he's talking about meditation and these things that happen. Okay. And I didn't know what the words were, so I was like, hey, does this word mean meditation? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, okay, cool, yeah, I get this. And he's like, well, what do you think about that? And I'm like, I think this guy knows his stuff. I think he's really cool. If this is something that works for you, if you can work within this space, you already have a cultural attachment. If this really lands for you, then just go, right? And it's this sort of two-part thing that we can get out of that story. One is, my background, having gone deep once, it's really easy to pick out what this guy's saying. And it's really easy to actually realize that he knows what he's talking about, because there are a lot of things that don't come up until you're actually meaningfully practicing that somebody who doesn't know what they're talking about would never know to talk about them. So the other part is, right, that openness. If my friend comes to me and says, hey, we talk about being happy human beings all the time, here's another information stream that I'm looking at, right? My impulse is not going to be no, just keep talking to me, right? It's going to be sweet. One, happy that you brought that to my attention, because I like to hear what other people have to say. But two, if that can get into a niche in your mind that is fruitful, awesome. Because what I have to say isn't the whole of what there is to say about being a happy human being, and I have just big glaring blind spots based upon the particular construction of my brain. I view the world in a certain way, and for people who view the world very differently, I don't really have a tremendous amount of insight into what's going on with them. They can explain what's going on with them to the best of their ability, and I can try to see where the commonalities are and what I have experience with, and maybe if they're encountering a hurdle from a different direction than I encountered that hurdle, and then we can talk about what the hurdle is. But there's going to be stuff that comes up where I don't know, and if somebody else knows, flip it around, right? That's my rambling thoughts on the idea of information monopolies. Like, if somebody's jealous of your attention, get away, because they've just clearly communicated to you that they don't actually have your best interest, your well-being in mind. They're actually invested in something going on with their ego. And if you find a place where you have some people who are more experienced than you, and they're able to offer you insights, and they seem to be, to the best of your ability to ascertain it, well motivated, actually just have your well-being in mind, then get stuck in and get to work and really understand what it is they're saying in the language that they use to describe it, so that you can engage constructively and meaningfully with the process of being a happy human being, and not just spin your wheels trying to pick up new jargon from this place and this place and this place, and never actually get to the meat of the problem. And one last thing on that is, going back to the fact that the texts are confusing, it's almost impossible, in my experience, to learn this sort of stuff just from books on your own without a community to bounce your interpretations off of. You can learn a lot that is of interest, but you'll probably be learning more about a given tradition than you will be learning from a given tradition, and that's a really important distinction, because most of what you get from books is, this is what human beings have said and done in the past. But just the realities of language and the quantity of information that can actually be exchanged through written text means that, at best, most books only contain hints as to the actual meaningful experiences that drove people to behave in a certain way and to say certain things. So, it's really important to find a community. It's really important to find a community that's open to multiple different information streams and doesn't try to lock you down into just listen to us and do our things. And once you found that, get stuck in.